Thank you so much for that introduction, Hope. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan Moran. I'm a solutions consultant, and one of the pleasures of my role is not only do I have almost 2 decades of experience working with education technology, but really the best part is working with a variety of different customers who want to accomplish different things in their learnings. And I've worked with corporate educators as well as training firms, and also executive education programs at universities. In fact, I even got my start in higher ed many years ago. I'm really, really pleased to share some of the best practices that we've learned together with our customers at NovoEd, and looking forward to answering your questions later in the presentation. So why don't we go ahead and get started here? And here is really our agenda slash intended outcomes for today's session. So we're going to be talking about how blended learning has changed in the digital workspace, especially because of COVID over the past year. We're also going to be talking about NovoEd's 5-step process to designing modern blended learning journeys. And specifically, thirdly, how does NovoEd support a collaborative blended learning journey on our platform? So let's go ahead and talk first a little bit more about what blended learning was and is, since so much has changed, especially over the last year, as I mentioned. So blended learning, the original vision, it was a blended learning. Well, it was a structured program in which someone went through a hybrid learning experience where part of it was done online, and there was some control over your time, your place, your path, maybe even the pace of your learning, because maybe you're going through any learning module and you're watching videos and reading articles, perhaps doing a quiz as a knowledge check, as a follow-up, for example. So there's that online component. And then, of course, blended learning also traditionally had the in-person component. So it was part in person. You maybe flew participants from different parts of the world to be together in a single place. Maybe that was done over a couple of days and it was done once, but maybe it was a really long program. Maybe it was like a 9 to 12 month program. And maybe throughout that journey, you had people coming together multiple times to get together in person. You had them in a conference, could have been like a company event, like a sales kickoff, or maybe it's your leadership development program, and you're constantly meeting in a classroom with a facilitator, and you get to see your fellow participants, the other learners, and you're not just engaging with each other over the discussions and exercises, activities that you're doing in person, but also during things like coffee breaks and bio breaks. You have opportunities to talk to each other then as well, and share things you've learned, lessons that have been learned from maybe applying that learning. And so people also love that the learning can be very social and collaborative, when they have that in-person component. And then typically you take that part online and part in-person learning experience, and you make sure it's supporting a learning path. So perhaps the intended outcome at the end of the journey is to be a better leader, or it's to be a better salesperson. Maybe you're going through a sales enablement journey, or maybe it's just to learn how to be successful at your new job. You might be going through a new hire employee onboarding program, for example. So we're making sure all these different modalities, online, on ground, or offline, in person, are working together to help support that learning path. The problem is with the pandemic over the past year, it really broke the model. And what happened to a lot of us is we had to replace that part in-person component in our current or past blended learning journeys with a video conferencing tool. Now maybe you're using Zoom like we are right now for this webinar, or maybe you're using something else like Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Skype for Business, what have you. But you're doing it all online, and there's some new challenges with that. So that could include Zoom fatigue, as we're constantly hearing about. A lot of articles around people just getting tired about constantly being in a live virtual meeting where they have their camera on, they want to show presence, they're constantly staring into the camera at the green or blue light to show people I'm here, and I'm trying to simulate as much as possible that in-person interaction, there's also some things that are lost. So the magic of in-person, I mentioned a couple of things. I gave you a couple hints there about being able to just have conversations very easily with your fellow participants. You know, it can happen again during a lot of other technical difficulties. Now, when you're in person, you know, you're not free from technical difficulties. There might be issues with the microphone. Maybe when someone's sharing their presentation, you're seeing all the presenter notes instead of the actual slideshow. But you know, if we're all going to be meeting together, like in a Zoom meeting like this, for example, we're probably, first of all, working remotely. Most of us are going to be in some type of home office, for example. We're all using our home Wi-Fi's for the most part, so there could be issues there. You may not be the only one in your home as well. You may have a spouse. You may have children going to school, for example. I have both of those happening in the next room right behind me. I have the kindergarten who's in her virtual classroom in Zoom right now. She's 6 years old, and I have my wife attending her meetings as well. So there are all these other challenges and potentially distractions that are happening as well. And here's probably the worst thing about what the pandemic has done with the traditional blended learning model is oftentimes we lost the path, because it makes it a lot more difficult to be able to track when you're not there in person, what's happening with conversations. Are they effective? Are people getting the work done? Am I able to provide as a facilitator adequate and appropriate feedback? So how do we make sure we don't lose that path if we're going to be transitioning, you know, to something that's new when we talk about blended learning? So I want to talk about that. You know, how do we rethink the magic of in-person learning? What exactly did we lose and that we want to be able to get back through a virtual means? So that's going to include relationships, right? You often, when people complete surveys at the end of an in-person training experience, you know, they often say, you know, my favorite part about the whole experience was getting to meet my colleagues and finding out how other business units are applying the learning, for example, and what they learned from it. I can meet people that I can then go back to and follow up with, you know, hey, remember when we went through that training together? I ended up doing this and it really worked for me. And I was curious, what did you do? What worked for you as well? So we're losing out on that relationship building sometimes when we're shifting from in-person to virtual. There's also the magic of facilitation, right? It's easier when you're in the room as a facilitator to be able to gauge what's happening. You can assess the room. You can read body language. You can rotate tables. You can move around. You can check in easily. So facilitators are challenged as well. And not everyone is used to using technology all the time. So there may have been a steep learning curve to learning how to facilitate in a virtual meeting like this one versus having to do it in person. Maybe you had already years of experience doing it in person, for example. And then there's peer learning. Now, I've talked a lot about engaging with your peers, your fellow participants, and that could be ad hoc. You know, maybe you just might learn something from having a casual conversation with another participant, or it could be very intentional. And maybe your exercises, the actual activities you're going to have the learners engage in can be based on peer learning, where they give each other feedback, right? And in a lot of the leadership development programs that our customers were doing in person, they love the ability for people to practice doing presentations and then being able to get feedback from everyone on those presentations. The participant didn't just learn from the feedback, but everyone who heard the feedback was also learning and taking that with them. So how do we drive collaboration across the learning journey, you know, when it can't be in person? How can we make sure virtual or blended learning, you know, according to the new definition, where it's part asynchronous online, part synchronous online potentially, you know, how do we make sure that people are effectively interacting and collaborating so they can learn together? Well, this is what that learning could look like. This is a digital learning experience. And in this example, we're showing you how you can bring back the collaboration and make this a shared learning experience. So here's our learning path. Going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, you'll see we get start off with having people do introductions. Maybe they have access to profiles that they maintain in the online learning experience. So people have an easy way to get to see who is this other person, where are they from, what business unit, perhaps you're curious, where do they go to school? And we can have them display answers to questions like, this is why I'm in this program. I'm a new hire and just getting started, or I've been identified as a high potential leader and I'm here to learn from my peers on how to be a great one. Moving on into that learning path, we see we can absolutely have a synchronous virtual event like a kickoff, for example, something a lot of our customers are doing today on our platform. We even have a Zoom integration to make it easier. So we could have those live meetings. Maybe you'll have multiple ones over the course of the learning journey. Maybe you'll have, maybe during the second week of the journey, a panel of leaders talking to the skills that these participants are trying to build, for example. Maybe you're going to use your virtual meeting to do live breakout groups, for instance. So we can certainly have those live virtual meetings, add a lot of value to the learning journey too. And I'm going to show you what that can look like in our platform in just a little bit. Now you'll see that the participants can engage with curated content throughout. So we can make sure they have access to readings from Harvard Business Review, for example, videos from TED Talks, for instance. Maybe you're using third-party content from Skillsoft, for example. Well, they can certainly continue to have access to all that great content. And we can even enable you to make sure that that content is being put into the proper business context within your learning journey as well. And as the learners are going through that journey and interacting with all of that great curated content, they can start practicing and applying what they're learning from the content. I can show you what that looks like too in just a moment from our platform. And not only can the learners practice, but they can get feedback. They can get feedback from their peers as well as facilitators, subject matter experts, and others that are going to be engaging in the program with them. Now, a lot of what I've talked about is dependent on an individual. As an individual, you're going to make sure you complete your profile and share that. You're going to make sure you attend the virtual meeting and participate. You'll do your homework, the pre-work perhaps, and you'll do the readings, you'll watch the videos, take the quizzes, and submit your own assignments for feedback. But we can also enable learners to collaborate together on these exercises. Maybe you want to set up a team assignment where they're going to be working on putting together an action plan for rolling out a new marketing campaign or a new sales effort around a new product in their portfolio, for example. I'll show you what that could look like in just a few moments in our platform. Now, even teams can also get feedback from other teams, peers, participants, as well as the facilitators. And that could just be an ongoing experience here. The learning journey, maybe you started out doing it in person and it was a 2 or 3 day learning journey, but we could take that learning journey that was in person and move it online and spread it out. Maybe instead of 2 or 3 days in person, now it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks virtual and online. And there's some benefits to that. You're giving the learners more time to absorb the learning. You're giving them time to reflect and also more time to apply and get feedback, because then they can even have some more time to maybe try again if they didn't do so great the first time around. All right, so as we're going through, as I promised, I'm going to show you how a lot of this can look like in the NovaEd platform. We're going to be highlighting 5 steps to creating a digital blend for an online learning path. Now that includes determining the learning drivers, right? So what is it about the in-person experience that you really want to bring into the virtual experience? Is it the fact that it needs to be social, it needs to be collaborative, there need to be opportunities for feedback? So let's identify what are those learning drivers that we need. And then let's address the gaps. So we're going to be comparing what do we need versus what do we have? What can we actually accomplish today with what we have today? Step 3 will be, after we do that, we understand what we need and what we have, we'll start selecting the right mix. So we're going to start making some choices. Okay, we're going to be using Zoom here and there. Over here, we're going to have an asynchronous team activity. So these are the kind of choices you'll be making to select that right mix. And then get the big picture. What's the online journey actually going to look like from beginning to end? How many days or weeks is it? How much time are you expecting the participants to partake in that journey? What are the specific to-dos that they have to complete? What are the certain things you want them to accomplish? And that includes identifying what are those specific learning outcomes. So the participant will be able to communicate more effectively as a new leader with her team, for example. These are the kinds of things we need to decide as part of designing the journey. And then, of course, we need to make sure it's effective. You know, for those of us designing the journey, facilitating it, running these programs, we got to measure the magic. And often that's something that got lost when we weren't there to witness it with our own eyes and ears. So we need access to data and analytics. So we know exactly what's working and what's not. And then we can make educated decisions about how to make this program better or scale it or achieve other goals. So let's start off with step 1 here. Now, determining learning drivers. Here we're trying to identify what were those magical elements of the face-to-face experience that we really want to make sure are included in the online experience. So I've listed 3 here: relationships, facilitation, and peer learning. And you'll see we've got 3 different scales, one for each. So for relationships, you know, it's a spectrum. You know, is it a self-paced learning journey where you get to determine maybe even like what module you start with? Well, we could certainly have it be that way. Or does it need to be something on the other side of the spectrum? It's going to be very social. It's going to be cohort based. It's even going to be time bound. And maybe we even have it sequenced according to a specific schedule as well, right? So that's what we have for relationships. For facilitation, we're trying to determine, are we really trying to facilitate to make sure we can have the learner, you know, exhibit exposition? You know, can they show us that they know how to use the software that they're learning to use as part of their new role, for example, or they know how to use a product and be able to pitch that particular product as part of their product training in the sales enablement program. Or is it more as a facilitator trying to facilitate feedback? You know, I'm not trying to make sure you could do something very specific. This learning is more nuanced, and I want to enable you to have difficult conversations that you may be having as a leader, for example. And maybe there's some diversity, equity, and inclusion training that's part of that. So we know how to speak to different cultures. Maybe you're a global company with a distributed workforce, and you've got people around the globe that are part of your team, for example. And then we got peer learning. And here on the spectrum, we're looking at passive compared to collaborative or active learning. Now, peer learning can be passive. For example, maybe you might just want to make sure that the learners have access to some YouTube videos that you've curated. And those YouTube videos already show you the amount of views that are there. They already have detailed comments that viewers have already posted. So you don't even need to submit something as a participant. You can go there, watch the video, and there's a lot you could take away from the comments that are already there. So that could be a passive peer learning experience. Or does it need to be more active? And we need to bring people together. We need to enable them to have conversations. We need to enable them to work together as critical thinkers to maybe solve a business problem. And come up with a solution, actually. And maybe that's a deliverable for a team assignment that a group of people are going to engage in together. So we'll look at that and what that could look like in an online learning journey. And then also, of course, how do we address those gaps? So we're going to look at how do we address those particular gaps. The orange circles you saw before on the previous slide that you're also seeing here, this is determining what's required on these different spectrums, on these different scales. You know, how social does the relationship, you know, component have to be in the program? You know, how much do we have to be able to facilitate feedback? Now, the yellow squares that you're seeing are showing us what's feasible. Now, this is just a hypothetical situation. And you can see here that really the gaps are in relationships and peer learning, because what's required is more than what's feasible. In facilitation, you know, in this example, we're saying we're good. We're good for now. You know, what's feasible is actually more than what's required. So we could meet that need and maybe even exceed it as well. So let me take a break here from showing these wonderful slides, and let me show you a little bit of the NovoEd platform and exactly how do we address those first two steps, determining the learning drivers and then addressing the gaps here. So while I do that, I see we do have a question from Brian Sakowski. Thank you. Will you discuss what forms that feedback comes in? Absolutely. We're going to be doing that as part of the demonstration. So let me show you NovoEd. And I'm going to show you the perspective of a participant or a learner here. And we're going to talk about step 1 and 2, the learning drivers and the gaps that we have to address there. So Leah, my participant for today, she's participating in a leadership development program. She's been identified as a high potential leader, and she's participating in this online learning journey with the cohort of her peers. So this is the homepage for the program. It's called Leading Virtual Teams during COVID. One of the programs is focused on how to be a better virtual leader, since everyone is working remotely now. Now, on the right side of the screen, you'll notice that Leah is part of a cohort. She's in a learning community. Now she could see who's been active and she can interact with them. In fact, she even has the ability to, as I mentioned before, set up a profile and enable others to easily get to know her a little bit better. Now, she can have that be an activity here. You'll notice that here we're showing a request to fill up your program profile, and that's going to enable you and your peers to get to know each other better. So this is a to-do as part of her learning journey in the NovoEd learning program. She has to complete her profile. This is actually going to take her to her profile that she can access anywhere within the program. And basically, it's requiring her to fill it out. Now, you can make what you want to be required information here. So you can make it required that Leah include a photograph of herself. We have an integration with LinkedIn to make it easy to grab your photo from there. You can also make it required to provide a statement about yourself. Now, this could be like your motto, for example, maybe what you're trying to accomplish in the program, and a short bio about yourself. So here are just some examples of things we might be asking, like where are you based? What's your role? What's your educational background? We might ask additional questions like here, how much leadership experience do you have? And Leah already answered this question and said over 5 years. These are all data points. We can query and run reports according to the information people are providing here. So if you want to find people in the same region easily, you could do that. If you want to find people that answered a question a certain way, like Leah having so much leadership experience, maybe you're looking for prospective mentors or coaches for a future cohort that's going to be going through this very same program. Well, you can certainly do that. Now, that's just one way we can make it social. Maybe, we're talking about blended learning. Maybe this is a program that's going to have some live components to it. So Leah actually has a little friendly reminder here. It's a nudge. It's automated, and it's letting her know that a kickoff webinar has already started. And there's a join now button. It'll take her right into the webinar, whether that's Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Skype or whatever you're using. It's as easy as copying and pasting the link to the meeting and providing it here. Now, we also make it easy to update attendance with a couple of clicks. You can even upload a file with your attendance sheet in a spreadsheet like Excel, for example. If you're using Zoom, We have a direct integration, so it will automatically track attendance for Zoom. It'll also award points automatically if you want to, or check off the to-do. Maybe that's a required to-do to go to the Zoom webinar. And you can also, if you record the Zoom session, it can also load that recording directly to the NovoEd Learning Program, all automatically. So that's all part of what our direct integration is with Zoom today. Now let's look at some other components that we wanted to include as part of this learning journey. We wanted to make sure it enables relationship building. Well, we showed you how we can have the participants be part of a cohort and they can get to know each other. Is some other components of how we're helping to accomplish those goals as part of this program. You'll notice, for example, that we could see trending posts. So there are discussions happening here. Now these different components, they have their own areas. So if you wanted to go to, for example, a centralized discussion area and see all the discussions and see, what are people saying here? You can even filter according to what's trending the most, what's getting the most likes. It's like, like social media, you can like or upvote people's comments, for example, what's getting the most comments as well. So we could easily filter all our discussions and engage with them this way. So that's one way we can enable people to get social and get to know their peers. Now, what's really probably an even bigger benefit of the NovoEd platform, and I mentioned this earlier, is you can take conversations and make sure that they're connected to the learning. We want to make sure that conversations, discussions are about the business problem we're trying to solve. And we want to make sure they're relevant to how we want to apply the learning in a program like this in the workplace, or maybe just generally in your career, because maybe you're a training firm or executive education provider, for example. So here, Leah has a video to watch. By the way, we can track these videos and let you know who watched them and who didn't as part of measuring the magic that we'll see in a little bit. You can also assess the learner. See, we have an embedded quiz that is actually stopping the video at specific seconds in the video and asking questions. This is a way you can engage your learners and find out where they at with the learning, because this video is in the beginning. So maybe you want to see, like, are you familiar with working remotely? Is this a whole new experience for you? We can also just keep them on task. Maybe we might want to ask them questions about what was in the video to make sure they're comprehending that. And then you'll notice after the video, we have a discussion. This is where Leah and her fellow participants can talk about how they're going to apply what they learned in the video at the workplace, or share with us your perspectives on that. We were talking in the video about the differences and similarities between working from home and working in an office. So maybe Leah's going to say, well, work-life balance is important for both, for example. And that's her contribution to the conversation. So she's going to go ahead and submit that. And that's part of our gamification that you're seeing displayed on the screen there. She just got 10 points for participating. For a lot of our customers at NovoEd, it's one of the motivators that's going to keep learners engaged and participating throughout the program. Plus, it's nice to get an instant reward, for making a contribution as well. So you've seen how we can enable social peer learning with profiles. We can do it with discussions. Now we can also do it with groups and teams. So you'll notice here in the community panel as well, there are some groups for Leah as a participant to explore. So we have groups and teams, both of them, because we have groups for interest groups, like affinity groups, and we have teams for team assignments. And teams can be journey long teams. It could be for the entire program, or they could be like assignment specific. You're going to go into a specific breakout group or team to complete that particular assignment. And this is going to enable people to have conversations that are, again, part of the curriculum of the program, or maybe just something that's relevant to the program. So emerging leaders, we have a lot of hypos in this program. Maybe Leah would like to join a group where she can meet other emerging leaders. Or maybe it's more about her role in the organization. And here's a Let's Get Fiscal group where we're having all the accountants in this particular program have a space where they can meet. Now you'll notice these groups and teams, by the way, have their own profiles. So if you want to ask the groups questions, about like, what is your intention for the group? Are you going to be meeting virtually, like in a Zoom meeting on a regular basis, for example? So you can set expectations about how the group is going to interact, but also about what you want to accomplish together. Are we going to be working on a project together? Are we going to be sharing that? All that can get clarified here. And let's say Leah wants to go ahead and join that group. She could start interacting with the group workspace. And she's actually been doing that already as part of another group. In fact, all your groups and teams and learning programs, they're all available here in the left navigation. So very easy to access. One of Leah's groups, for example, is about multicultural leadership. And this is the group workspace. Every team and group has a workspace. And you can have conversations here. You can share content. Now, of course, content's going to include what's been curated by the program builder or facilitator, but this is an opportunity for the participants to also share their own content. Now, it could be user-generated content that they created, but maybe they found some great articles, white papers, videos that they want to be able to share as part of the conversation. And you'll notice this is all very easily accessible in terms of having to be asynchronous. So you have people in different time zones, or they just have busy schedules. They might be doing the program while they're doing their day-to-day jobs anyway. We give them that flexibility to be able to contribute and participate when they can. But if they want to meet at the same exact time in a virtual meeting, they can actually even do that here. They can create their own virtual meeting in Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and then invite everyone to attend in their group or team. And those individuals can RSVP and get a reminder for when it's time for them to meet as well. Now, I see we got another question here from Janie Johnson. Thank you. Can you show us what the analytics look like and in what form are they available? Absolutely will. Just a little bit, we'll take an actual deep dive into the learning analytics, and they're available as dashboards with out-of-the-box reports. And you also have the ability to run your own custom reports and get that data out into CSV or spreadsheet files as well. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. Now, let's go ahead and get back into our steps now that you've seen a little bit about how do we identify the learning drivers and address the gaps. Well, we're also going to need to, as we're going through the steps and moving on to step 3, design the mix. What's the sequence going to be like? And here are just 4 different examples of what actually all of our customers are doing at some point or another amongst our customer mix. So for example, starting at the top here, we've got live training and online. This is very traditional. You may have a kickoff webinar like we did in our example in the NovoEd platform. Then you have that followed up with online modules that are asynchronous. This is where they'll engage in e-learning after having that live meeting. Perhaps the modules are their opportunity to apply what they learned in the live webinar, for example. Now, below that, we actually have flipped that model. And this is what a lot of people would describe as a flipped classroom approach, in which we'll start with the online modules and then we'll end with the live meetings. So you may have the participants engage in pre-work as part of that online work before the live meeting. And that way you could focus the live training or meeting more on having a dialogue and less about sharing information or setting the stage or just getting people used to a new concept. They're already coming in warmed up into that live training. So that's another approach and a way to sequence the learning. Now the third line there, live training and coaching is kind of a modification of the first model that we looked at. And maybe after you have your live training, your webinar, you have those learners go through some online modules, but maybe you sprinkle in some webinars throughout the online modules portion. You could use it, as a presentation, like I mentioned before, maybe a panel for a discussion. It could also just be used for Q&A. We just wanted to give people an opportunity to ask live questions. People probably have questions that other people also have, or that people also need to hear. Maybe they didn't think of the question, but they actually need to know the answer. So that's another approach. We can make the online modules include collaboration as well through a webinar. And then lastly, a deep take-home work approach. This is more like the high potential program I mentioned earlier that might be 9 to 12 months. Maybe you have a live training and then live modules, but you're going back and forth a lot. Maybe every other month you're having people get together for a live training to help digest what they've been consuming and learning, as they're going through those online modules. And maybe that's their opportunity to also practice and apply. So we'll help you design the mix or sequence of the learning, and then we got to map the activities. So think of this as a potential sequence here, what you're seeing on this particular slide, and we'll start at the bottom and move up, because maybe this is your first activity, and then as we move up the list here, you go into the second and third activity. So maybe you start off with enabling learners to learn what's an effective pitch, sales pitch, for example. And the learners may be watching videos, reading articles online, maybe providing links to those, and then they can have a discussion in your discussion board. Maybe it's the next activity or exercise. They need to better understand the key elements of that pitch. So maybe they see a presentation, so they can see an example of a good pitch. And then you have a live poll. You'll ask people to share their opinions. What worked? What didn't? What did you like the most? What did you like the least? And what would you change? Maybe as a third activity, we want to enable the learners to support what they're learning with evidence. So deliver some proof that you can really lead a meeting, or you can really give us a really good value proposition, and maybe you're writing that, as part of your new employee onboarding program, and you're saying, okay, here's my 2 or 3 sentence value proposition for my new job, my new employer. Or maybe going back to the sales example, you're having people practice their pitches and recording videos, and they're going to get feedback from sales managers and other sales team members. And it also gives them some opportunity to reflect when they get that feedback. And then maybe the fourth activity is going to be, let's combine all these different things that we've been learning into something that makes sense, into a story flow. And maybe you'll have a virtual session where you take turns doing presentations, right? Earlier, you got to see an example of a good one. Now it's your turn to deliver one, and hopefully it's good. And again, you get more feedback there. Now, let me show you what could that look like in the NovoEd program. So we're going to go back into Leah's experience here. Now, one of the things that Leah has to do for practice and application is engage in an individual challenge. Now, this is a video assignment, and we're asking her to practice leading a meeting. So we've seen a lot of customers at NovoEd, like Motorola Solutions and Stanley Black & Decker. They're doing sales enablement, so they're having salespeople practice sales pitches here. Almost all of our customers are doing leadership development. It's our most popular use case on the NovoEd platform. So they might have people practice leading a meeting or having a difficult conversation with a direct report. And the way they're doing it is even flexible. So they can use whatever software they want and drag and drop a file here. We also have a mobile app for iPhones and Androids, so they can use the microphone and camera on their phone to record a video in our mobile app. Or they can actually avoid switching software and switching devices if they're already on their computer and using a browser, and they could just use our record a video feature here and record their practice video. They'll get a 3-second countdown. The video is recorded in 720p high definition, so it's high resolution, it's very high quality. And the learner can also review what they did. If they're happy with it, they can go ahead and submit that. And what happens to it when it is submitted is also configurable too, in terms of how do you want to facilitate the feedback. That video, for example, could go to the facilitator or instructor or manager or mentor coach to review it and give one-on-one feedback. So it could be a private assignment, or it could be made into a public one where we're soliciting feedback from peers. So you'll notice in our next assignment, it's a follow-up to the video assignment. We're asking the participants to engage in some peer feedback. So this is an assignment, it counts towards completing the program and getting your certificate. We're asking every learner to evaluate at least 3 submissions from their peers. They'll get 10 points or what have you for every feedback they submit. And we just made it easy to be able to see in the gallery, what are other people doing? Now you could use the gallery by itself and just showcase what people are doing. It doesn't have to be tied to an assignment. But here, because it is part of a peer feedback assignment, we're taking the value to a whole nother level. And so Leah's not just gonna learn by watching Rebecca's video. She's also gonna learn from seeing the feedback that Rebecca's getting. And of course, Leah can also provide her feedback. She can like what she's seeing. She could provide comments like she did earlier in that previous discussion we saw where she got 10 points for participating. And there's even feedback, not just from peers, but also from mentors and others like who might be participating in this, like the instructors and facilitators. So that's Mark. He is a mentor, and he's actually providing some expert level feedback here. Now, getting that feedback can actually happen in different ways. So like I said before, it might be an individual assignment or challenge you're working on. Maybe it's going to be a group assignment and you want people to work in teams. So I'm already describing 2 of our 4 pillars here at NovoEd: practice and application and working in teams. And soon I'll cover some more like mentors and managers. And actually we did cover another one, discussion and feedback, just a little bit earlier. And now actually, so in this example, before we were looking at an individual assignment, this is a team assignment. We're having Leah with her team create a case study. So they're gonna be looking at things like buyer personas. They're going to be looking at perhaps business problems they want to solve within the organization. Maybe you're trying to create a better performance management process, for example. So they're going to address these goals that we already have for improving things in the workplace and start working on those solutions right here. They can actually have a rubric so they know exactly how they're going to be evaluated for their work. And they can easily upload a presentation, for example. And again, we have that workspace where they can easily get together, work on their projects, assignments. You can even have facilitators, managers like Charlie here, checking in and keeping people on task, or just providing some feedback as well at that expert level, like I mentioned before. Now that's what's happening on the participant side, being able to engage in all these opportunities to apply the learning and then get feedback. So let's take a look at what that feedback looks like. I just introduced Mark a couple of minutes ago, and actually Mark is a mentor. He is also Leah's manager. For a lot of our customers, they do have supervisors or managers serving as mentors and coaches. That's something Comcast does regularly. They're one of our customers. They're using us for leadership development. And what Mark has as a mentor, and by the way, you can use your own terminology on our platform. So if you want to call him a coach or facilitator, that's what people will see when they log in. And on the dashboard that Mark has access to, well, basically we gave him a quick and easy way to be able to track his participants, know exactly where they are, and also made it quick and easy for him to execute on some workflows as part of his role as a mentor. So for example, here you could see 2 people need approval. That includes Leah. You could see her progress bars. Same thing Leah sees on the homepage. She knows exactly where she's at. And he could see that she submitted something. All right, so this is her video from a few minutes ago. He could provide her some feedback. Maybe that's very positive feedback. You could keep the feedback one-on-one. You can also choose to share that feedback and just check a box and say, I want this displayed to everybody in the cohort. Leah did an excellent job. Everyone should see what she did so they have another example of what we want them to do. Or maybe it needs to be constructive feedback. I kind of just babbled, didn't I, as I was doing that video. So maybe you'll ask her to please include an agenda and then re-record it. So you'll see at the bottom, we can actually send it back. And then Leah gets pinged saying, hey, you just got some feedback from Mark. Tap here to see it and re-record your video and resubmit. So that's how we could support some informal feedback. That way, Mark can deliver the feedback exactly the way he wants to. But maybe you want to collect the feedback in a specific way. Maybe you want to get the feedback exactly the way you want to, as far as the way you're designing the program. Well, there's a way to do that too. So here, Mark is seen in a different filter or bucket of learners. He has 3 people that need evaluations to be completed. So he can click on what they submitted. And this is an activity that has been set up with formal structured feedback. This is that rubric I showed you from Leah's perspective as a participant. So Mark can see what was the assignment, what did we ask them to do, what did the learners do, what did they submit? Okay, they created a presentation. And then over here on the right, a score, or if you're in a school, you can ask for a grade, for example. You can ask for people to submit short answers. We even include a feedback capture grid just to make it easy to include some notes on what worked or what didn't. If this is a HiPo program for high potential leaders, maybe just want to ask the evaluator, do you think this person is ready to move into leadership at this point? Maybe this is the capstone assignment that they have to complete at the end of the learning journey, for example. All right. So that's a little bit of how we can support steps 3 and 4 in our 5-step approach here. So how can we design the mix, map to activities? And I did say there were 5 steps, right? So here's step 5. And then how do we measure the magic? This is, again, as I mentioned before, where we often lose the learning path because we don't have the insights to be aware of not just what's working and what's not, but what are people doing exactly? What's their progress? You know, and sometimes people need that information to live in other places too. So most of our customers have an LMS. We integrate with it. We set up single sign-on. So if you want to collect data about completion rates and scores, and we even support XAPI if you want really granular data, you can have that all flow into a system of record. So you can have it in one place. Let me show you, because we did have some questions before about what do those analytics look like. So let me introduce you to Denise. And Denise is our facilitator and learning experience designer. She created the Leading Virtual Teams program. And because she's an admin and is an admin user, she can access an admin dashboard. What you have here are just some shortcuts of things she could do, like create groups and teams. By the way, you can have you could configure it so participants form their own groups and teams. She can also set up announcements. By the way, announcements, messages, automated notifications could all be set up in advance. So you could set them and forget them. and even configure specific triggers too. So maybe you might want to send a different message to someone who got 100% on a quiz, maybe encourage them to become a mentor versus someone who may need some more remedial work. They didn't do so great on the quiz, and you want to automatically recommend them some additional reading, for example. Now, there's also analytics available. And we have analytics available at the org level, organization level, as well as the program level. So we'll look at the program level here. At both levels, you get dashboards that are showing you data in real time. So you always get the latest and greatest in terms of what's happening in your program. There are out-of-the-box reports. So all these reports that you're seeing as I'm scrolling through here are included with the NovoEd program. That includes every assignment, who completed, who didn't. So you can see performance data. Also, every discussion, when are people participating, when are they not? So you get to see engagement data here, for example, in week 3 of this journey. People were really, really excited and participating in discussions a lot. So what got them talking? We can dig deeper and get insights into what was so effective about week 3. Was it a great webinar, some great readings, or maybe you just had a really collaborative social activity that got people excited and wanting to talk more. You also see we can even look at metrics for our content, like videos, for example. I mentioned if you upload a video to our platform, we can tell you who watched, who didn't. So you get to take advantage of our analytics if the content lives here on the NovoEd platform, but it can live somewhere else. You can embed third-party content. For a video like this, we could see things like how much did the people watch on average, for example. Who didn't watch, who did, if they stopped watching, when did that happen? So 33 people stopped watching in the first 10% of the video. So if you see a big drop off here, this one's not so bad. The videos might not be the best video for your program. Maybe it's too long, maybe it's not relevant. You can change it. You have the insight to know that and make it an educated decision. Now, you can get the data out too. So if you don't see the data you want, or report you want, you can configure your own. We call them data downloads. And a big differentiator about the NovoEd platform is we let you report on all the constituents in your program, not just the learners. So yeah, we can report on learners, you can see here, but we can also run reports on the mentors and the teaching team. Maybe this is a pilot, it's a brand new program, and you just want to see what does it take to run this? Because we're going to scale this. We're going to have so many more people participating in this in the months to come. So we want to again make good decisions and have them based on data about how many more facilitators do we need? What does it take to facilitate? How much of a time commitment is it? So we could set expectations with the teaching team. And the teams and the groups, those can all be reported on as well. As you'll notice, it's point and click. You just select the data that you want. That can include behavioral data, like how many likes did someone get on their comments in the discussions, for example. And then just give your report a name and you can run it whenever you want. It'll be saved. And this is just an example of what a data download can look like. As you can see, granular data is available here. You can review it in a spreadsheet tool, or we can have this also flow into a system of record where you're going to be doing analytics. Maybe you have a business intelligence tool that's going to create beautiful visualizations with this data. That'll include data like when did those learners come? When did they last come? What were their visits? What did they do while they were in here? What were their answers to profile questions? What's the summary of what they did? How many total things did they contribute, for example? What was their participation like in groups and teams? Did they schedule any meetings? How many? What was their work like in assignments and quizzes? What were the answers they gave us? And what was the feedback like for all that great work that they did? Did people like it? You can ask people specific questions and evaluations like you saw a little bit earlier from Mark's perspective. And if you are using, I mentioned like third-party tools, well, we could see, did they actually engage with those third-party tools? Or if you have live events, did they attend, for example? So these are just some examples of the data points that you can review and even send into another system as well. All right, so we've gone through our 5 steps for designing a blended learning experience here on the NovoEd platform. I want to thank you for all the great questions we've gotten so far in the Q&A area in Zoom. I'm going to go back there now, but yeah, keep the questions coming. We do have a few more minutes left in the hour, so thanks again for participating. As you can see, the NovoEd platform is really designed for facilitating that social collaborative learning experience where you can have a lot of feedback and especially have it applied to a strategic and guided learning program. So I hope I'll hand it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Juan, for sharing all your wonderful insights with us today and for sharing the NovoEd platform. We do have a couple more questions. I think we have time for 1 or 2. Let's see, Janet here says, this looks like a great product. You've mentioned private and for-profit industry companies and a focus on sales. Is this product applicable to nonprofits or international non-governmental organizations that are nonprofit driven, but still have measurable outcomes?
Yes, we do work with nonprofit organizations. One of them is the Obama Foundation. They actually are doing a mentoring program with interns on our platform. So yeah, thanks for calling that out, because we do have really a fourth category of customers working on social impact.
Wonderful. And let's see, we have one more right here from Devin, who wants to know, is there a visible leaderboard for each cohort to drive engagement? For example, Leah has 50 points for contribution.
Oh, yeah.
To compare, and then was also curious about badges and badging.
Yeah, I didn't show it in the demo, but there is a leaderboard and it's configurable. So you can turn it on or turn it off if you want to. And then you could decide how many people do you want displayed on the leaderboard. What was the second part of the question? Sorry, Hope.
That's perfectly fine. They were also curious about badging.
Oh, the badging. So at the end of the program, you can also configure someone to receive a certificate of completion. We have customers that will set that up as a badge. And then one of the things we're exploring for our roadmap is integration with a badging platform like a Credly or Badger as well.
Wonderful, thank you. I think that's all the time we have for Q&A today. But again, Juan, thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us today.
Thank you.